The man in the rain. I had just placed the last of the roasted vegetables on the table when the doorbell rang. Wiping my hands on a dish towel, I glanced at the wall clock. 7:15 p.m. 10 minutes early. The subway must have been running on time. I made a mental note of the small victory coming. I walked to the door, instinctively smoothing out the collar of my worn-out t-shirt. When I opened the door, Ava was standing there, her hair damp, clearly caught in a sudden summer downpour. The shoulders of her white blouse were soaked, clinging to her slender frame. I frowned. "Why didn't you get an Uber?" I took her bag, my fingers brushing against the cool, wet leather. Ava smiled, a familiar exhaustion in her eyes. "Trying to save a little money. It wasn't raining that hard anyway." My chest tightened. In the 3 years we'd been married, that phrase had become her mantra. Save a little money. For our home, for the kids we planned to have, for all the dreams that still felt so far away. I reached out and brushed a droplet of water from the end of her hair, my fingertips feeling the cool dampness. "Go get changed before you catch a cold," I said softly, my voice laced with a guilt I hadn't even realized was there. Ava nodded, stood on her toes to give me a quick kiss on the cheek, and headed for the bedroom. I stood for a moment, smelling the faint trace of her perfume in the air. A gift from me on her last birthday, the last bottle on the sale rack at Macy's. On the dining table, 2 dishes and a soup were steaming gently. I dished out 2 bowls of rice, and by the time Ava emerged in her comfortable loungewear, the food was the perfect temperature. "How was your day?" Ava asked, picking up a piece of broccoli with her fork. My own fork paused midair. "The usual." Kevin Price stole another one of my clients. "Mark seems to think the sun shines out his ass." "Kevin? That brown-nosing parasite." Ava's brow furrowed. "Are your bosses blind? Didn't you train him when he first started?" I managed a bitter smile. Sterling Enterprises was a titan in the industry. Getting a foot in the door wasn't easy. But after 3 years, I was still just a marketing specialist, while my peers had either been promoted or jumped ship to better companies. "Maybe I'm just not cut out for it," I mumbled, looking down at my rice to hide the disappointment in my eyes. "Don't be ridiculous," Ava said, her fork tapping sharply against the rim of her bowl. "You're the most brilliant person I know. Remember that business plan from college? The online education platform? That idea is more relevant now than ever." Hearing her mention, it sent a dull ache through my chest. I had once submitted that very plan, full of hope, to Sterling's internal venture capital division, only to have it mercilessly rejected. A month later, the company launched an almost identical project, spearheaded by a senior director. "Let's just eat," was all I could say. After dinner, Ava insisted on doing the dishes. I stood in the kitchen doorway, watching her slender figure busy at the sink. 3 years ago, when we got married, Ava said all she wanted was a stable life. So I turned down a startup opportunity in Austin and found a steady job in this city. I had never regretted that decision, at least not until today. "Oh, by the way," Ava said, turning her head, "our anniversary is next Wednesday. I booked a restaurant." I was taken aback. "Which one? Is it expensive? I can send you the money." "Don't worry about it. I got a voucher from work," she said with a wink. "It's practically free." I walked over and wrapped my arms around her waist from behind, resting my chin on her shoulder. "Ava, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you have to live this kind of life with me, always pinching pennies." Her hands paused for a second before she resumed scrubbing a plate. "You're silly. I'm happy." Later that night, I lay in bed, listening to the sound of Ava's steady breathing beside me. Moonlight filtered through a gap in the curtains, casting a dappled light on her face. For the first time in 3 years, I felt a strange sense of dissonance. Ava always wore affordable clothes from stores like Zara or H&M, yet she carried herself with an elegance that couldn't be concealed. She worked as a secretary for the general manager, Sarah Jennings, and her salary wasn't high. Her frugality was almost extreme, all for the sake of our life together in this expensive city. I turned over, trying to banish the strange thoughts from my mind. I was just tired. I had a huge presentation tomorrow, and the proposal had already been sent back for revisions 5 times. The next day at the presentation, I stood in front of the projector screen, my palms sweating. My Starbright Education initiative was now in its 6th iteration, a pale shadow of its original concept. The conference room was filled with a dozen senior managers, and the general manager, Sarah Jennings, was expected any minute. According to our market research, the demand for bite-sized learning among the 18 to 35 demographic is growing rapidly. My voice sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet room. Just then, the conference room door opened. Every head turned, and my presentation ground to a halt. A woman in a sharp, dark blue power suit walked in, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. It was Sarah Jennings, the general manager of Sterling Enterprises. "Good morning, Ms. Jennings," I said with a polite smile. Sarah's eyes swept across the room, her gaze landing on me for a cold, dismissive moment. She took her seat at the head of the table and nodded to my director. "Continue." Her icy stare unnerved me. It was the look you give a failure. "Leo, are you all right?" My director, Mark Reynolds, asked with a frown. Before I could answer, Ms. Jennings looked over, a clear warning in her eyes. "If Mr. Martinez is feeling unwell, we can have someone else present." Her words were like a splash of ice water. I took a deep breath and forced myself to continue. "And that concludes my proposal. Thank you." By the time I finished, my back was soaked with sweat. The executives began their discussion. Some raised questions, others voiced support. But Sarah Jennings remained impassive, her face a mask. Finally, she closed her folder, ignoring the surprised looks from others. "The concept has merit, but the execution plan is weak. Reject it. Work on it tonight and revise it." I stumbled into the restroom and splashed cold water on my face. Staring at my pale reflection in the mirror, my heart filled with a bitter, helpless frustration. 11:17 p.m. The last light in the office was still on. I rubbed my sore eyes, the numbers on the screen blurring together. This was my third late night this month, all to finish a damned quarterly analysis report. My boss, Mark, would present it to the higher-ups tomorrow, and my name wouldn't even be on the cover slide. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Ava. "Hubby, don't work too late. I left you some soup." The simple words brought a small smile to my face. For 3 years, no matter how late I came home, she always left a light on for me. "Almost done. Love you." I typed back, adding a heart emoji after a moment's hesitation. As I saved the document, my computer froze for a few seconds. The old machine was as tired as I was. When I joined Sterling Enterprises 5 years ago, I dreamed of climbing the ladder. Now I was still stuck as a mid-level analyst. My peers had either been promoted or had moved on. I was the only one still running in place. "Still here, Mr. Martinez?" A security guard, an old-timer named John, peeked in, jingling his keys. "Just about done," I said, forcing a smile as I shut down my computer. Outside, a cold wind cut through my thin jacket. I'd had it for 4 years. The fabric was pilling and the cuffs were frayed. But plans to buy a new one were always pushed aside by more pressing expenses. The subway car was nearly empty. I found a corner seat and instinctively checked my bank app. Balance $7,873.26. Ava's birthday was next Sunday, and I still hadn't figured out what to get her. Last year's discounted scarf had cost $50, and she'd worn it happily all winter. This year, my phone's photo gallery was still topped by our wedding picture. In it, Ava wore a simple white dress, her eyes crinkling into crescent moons as she smiled. We'd had a small wedding in our hometown, keeping everything simple. I'd known her for 6 years, dated for 3, married for 3. I promised her a better life, but here we were, still renting the same 500-square-foot apartment in Queens. Pushing the door open, I was enveloped by the warm yellow light and the smell of food. Ava had fallen asleep, curled up on the sofa, a financial news channel still playing on the TV. Hashtag. Unraveling threads, she always did this, waited up for me, but often couldn't fight off sleep. I tiptoed over, intending to cover her with a blanket, but the movement woke her. "Honey, you're back. You must be exhausted. I'll go heat up the soup." She was wearing a faded set of pajamas, her hair tied back loosely. "I can do it," I said, stopping her and kissing her forehead. "Why are you still up?" "Waiting for you," she smiled, heading to the kitchen. "How did the interview go today?" I froze. The interview last week in new tech startup was something I hadn't told her about. They were offering 1.5 times my current salary. But the rejection email had come this afternoon, the reason vague and noncommittal. "Didn't get it," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Guess I wasn't good enough." Ava turned and wrapped her arms around me. "It's their loss. My husband is the best." Her embrace was warm and strong, but it only made me feel more guilty. After we ate, I did the dishes while Ava went to take a shower. Over the sound of running water, her phone lit up on the coffee table. I didn't mean to look, but the sender's name stopped me cold. Sterling Int. HR. Why would corporate HR be contacting Ava directly? My hands now dry. I hesitated before picking up the phone. The screen had gone dark, but the notification preview was clear enough. "Regarding Leo Martinez's promotion review, please confirm tomorrow at 10 a.m. The water in the bathroom shut off. I quickly put the phone back, my heart pounding like a drum. How did Ava know about my promotion review? I hadn't even told her I'd applied. "Honey, can you grab my pajamas for me?" Ava called from the bathroom. "Sure," I stammered, walking mechanically toward the bedroom, my mind a chaotic mess. In the closet hung a silk pajama set I'd bought for her last birthday. I remember the shocking price tag, making me gasp at the time, but she had claimed she bought on clearance. As I handed them to her, I noticed a new set of skincare products on her vanity. I recognized the French brand. A friend's wife used it. A tiny bottle cost hundreds of dollars. Last week, Ava had said her cousin gave her some samples. But now, what's wrong? Ava asked, emerging from the bathroom, toweling her hair, noticing my dazed expression. Nothing. I forced a smile. Just a little tired. Lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. Ava's back was to me, her breathing even. Moonlight streamed through the gap in the curtains, glinting off the watch on her nightstand. A delicate, elegant timepiece I had never seen before. Even in the dim light, it radiated a quiet, understated luxury. The next morning, I arrived at the office half an hour early. In the empty room, I logged into the company portal and checked the promotion review list. Sure enough, my application status read denied. The time of denial was yesterday afternoon, which meant Ava knew I had been rejected for the promotion before I even received the rejection from the other company. Leo, my office. Mark Reynolds' voice startled me from behind. I nearly jumped out of my chair. With the door closed, Mark's expression was unusually grim. They shot down your promotion. Straight from the top. He lowered his voice. Honestly, did you piss someone off? This is the third time. My throat felt tight. The top. Who? Mark shook his head. Who knows with the executives? But he hesitated. Last Friday, I saw Ms. Jennings' assistant carrying your file up to the executive floor. The executive floor? The CEO's floor? Ava Sterling? The rarely seen, enigmatic head of the company? I'd never even met her. How could I? A ridiculous, impossible thought struck me. My wife's name was Ava. The CEO's name was Ava Sterling. The surname? It couldn't be. It was too insane. My wife was a low-level administrative assistant with a modest salary. We counted every dollar for our utility bills. How could she possibly? But all the little inconsistencies started to piece themselves together, forming a picture I was terrified to look at. Leo, are you listening? Mark asked, frowning. Sorry, I zoned out, I said, forcing myself to focus. So, there's no hope for the promotion? Not unless someone up there changes their mind. Mark said, patting my shoulder. Don't let it get you down. Keep working hard. I walked out his office, my palms slick with sweat. I needed proof. I needed to know if this insane theory was real. If Ava was really hiding something. If our entire 3-year life together was a lie. I looked toward the executive elevator, the one that required a special key card to access the top floor, and made a decision. I stood in the corner of the Sterling Enterprises lobby, wearing a baseball cap pulled down low. Today was the quarterly all-hands meeting, and tradition held that the reclusive CEO, Ava Sterling, would make an appearance. For the past 3 years, I never paid it any mind. Today was different. Suddenly, a commotion rippled through the crowd. I stood on my toes and saw a group of people emerging from the private elevator. Leading them was a tall woman in a sharply tailored dark blue suit, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. She strode quickly toward the main conference hall, offering only a view of her back. My heart skipped a beat. That back, the way she walked, the slight tilt of her head to the right, it was identical to my Ava's. No, it was absurd. I shook my head, trying to dislodge the crazy idea. Ava had told me this morning she was going on a 2-day business trip to Chicago to meet a client. She'd even shown me the flight confirmation. Once the meeting started, I couldn't focus. That woman's silhouette was burned into my mind. Before the meeting ended, I slipped out, claiming I had to use the restroom, and waited around a corner in the hallway. An hour later, the group returned to the elevators. This time, I saw her profile, a high-bridged nose, a sharply defined jawline. She wore black-framed glasses, and her makeup was far more sophisticated than anything my Ava would wear, but just as the elevator doors were closing, she raised her hand to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture, the way her index finger curled slightly, was exactly the same as Ava's. My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. Back at my desk, I immediately Googled Ava Sterling photos. The results were sparse. The few images that existed were from a distance or in profile, and most were 3 or 4 years old. The mysterious CEO seemed to deliberately avoid the media. I pulled up the employee database and found the CEO's basic profile. Ava Sterling, 30, Harvard Business School MBA, only daughter of founder Edward Sterling. 30 years old. My Ava had just turned 29 last week. The age didn't match. I let out a breath of relief. Of course, my wife was just a regular person. What on earth was I thinking? I almost laughed at my own paranoia. And yet, a nagging feeling of dissonance remained. I went home to an empty apartment. Ava's business trip had begun. I opened our closet, her few sets of professional work clothes hanging neatly. I ran my hand over the lapel of a navy blue blazer. It was nearly the same color as the one Ava Sterling had been wearing today. My phone buzzed. A text from Ava. Just got to Chicago and checked into the hotel. Miss you. It was accompanied by a picture of a generic hotel room. I zoomed in, searching for clues, but it was too plain to identify. After replying stay safe, I opened my laptop and searched for the Sterling Enterprises CEO's schedule. As a regular employee, I couldn't access that. But the company's internal forums sometimes held clues. After scrolling through dozens of pages, an inconspicuous comment caught my eye. The boss is flying to Chicago tomorrow for the Midwest Business Summit. Supposed to meet some major clients. Chicago? The Midwest Business Summit? The timing perfectly coincided with Ava's business trip. My throat went dry. It could be a coincidence, but there were too many. I kept digging and found an old article from 3 years ago. Sterling Enterprises' new helm, Ava Sterling, takes over quietly. The accompanying photo was a blurry profile shot. I downloaded it, enhanced it with some software, and zoomed in. On her right earlobe, there was a tiny mole. My Ava had a mole on her right earlobe, too. I slammed the laptop shut, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. I needed more direct proof. The next morning, I called in sick. Ava had said she'd be in meetings all day and wouldn't be back at her hotel until the evening. If she really was Ava Sterling. I opened the drawer of her vanity, a place she never let me touch. In the very back was a small lockbox. I'd seen it a few times. She'd said it was a jewelry box her mother had left her. Using a paperclip, I fashioned a makeshift lockpick, a trick a college roommate had taught me. With a soft click, the box sprang open. Inside, there was no jewelry, only a few bank cards and a passport. I opened the passport, and my breath caught in my throat. The name printed in bold letters was A.V.A. Sterling. The photo was a makeup-free picture of my wife. The birth year on the passport made her exactly 1 year older than she'd told me. Beneath the passport was a folded piece of paper. It was a draft of a prenuptial agreement, dated 2 months before our wedding. One of the clauses was explicit. Party B, Leo Martinez, shall not be made aware of Party A, Ava Sterling's, true identity or financial status. My vision blurred. The paper trembled in my hands. 3 years of marriage. It was all a lie. There was also a small USB drive in the box. My hand shaking, I plugged it into my laptop. It contained a single encrypted folder. After a few failed attempts, I tried our wedding date as the password. It worked. The folder was filled with dozens of documents. The titles made my blood run cold. The Unmasking Leo Martinez Promotion Review, denied. Leo Martinez Startup Proposal Analysis, rejected. Leo Martinez External Offer Investigation, intercepted. The most recent document had been created yesterday. Leo Martinez Contact Monitoring Report. It contained a detailed log of everyone I had recently contacted, including the headhunter from last week and Chris Chun, my college roommate, now a founder of his own startup. A note at the end of the document read, "Continue monitoring. Report any entrepreneurial movements immediately." I collapsed into my chair, a sick feeling churning in my stomach. This wasn't a marriage. It was a meticulously crafted experiment. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Ava. No, from Ava Sterling. "It's raining in Chicago. How's the weather over there?" I stared at the seemingly innocent message. Reading it now, it was dripping with irony. She was monitoring every aspect of my life while pretending to care about the weather. I stood before the glass walls of the Sterling Enterprises Tower, clutching an ID card I'd borrowed from a colleague. The VP of IT, Kevin Price, was supposed to be running diagnostics on the 28th floor executive office systems today. He had a last-minute conflict, and as he was wondering who to send, I volunteered. "I have to drop off some files for Mark Reynolds up there anyway. I can do it on my way." Kevin, suspecting nothing, gladly handed over his high-access card. Company policy should have prevented me from ever setting foot on the executive floor. But in practice, things relax. People covered for each other all the time, and management usually looked the other way. I had never had a reason to go to the executive building before, but now, filled with doubt, I had to try. I swiped Kevin's card. The elevator ascended, the numbers climbing steadily. My knuckles were white from gripping my briefcase. 2 days ago, I'd found an encrypted schedule on Ava's tablet. It clearly stated that at 10:30 a.m. today, Sterling CEO Ava Sterling would be hearing a quarterly report from the IT department. Last night, Ava had told me, "I have a day trip to Boston tomorrow, won't be back until late." Ding! The elevator doors slid open silently, and the cold air of the executive suite hit me. A secretary smiled as she approached. "You must be the technician from IT, Ms. Sterling and her team are waiting for you. I nodded, my throat tight. As I pushed open the heavy walnut door, I saw a figure standing with her back to me, looking out the floor-to-ceiling windows. She wore a tailored navy blue suit, her hair in a flawless chignon. A Cartier Panther bracelet glinted on her wrist. Sitting beside her was the company's general manager, Sarah Jennings, whose eyes widened in shock when she saw me. I reviewed the system parameters. Get straight to the point, the woman said, her voice cool and sharp, a world away from the gentle, soft-spoken Ava I knew at home. She turned around. The moment our eyes met, the air in the room froze. Ava, or rather, Ava Sterling. Her pupils contracted violently. The pen in her hand clattered onto the desk. Her lips trembled as she took an involuntary step back, her heel bumping against the leather chair behind her. I stared at her, my chest heaving, but I ruthlessly suppressed the storm of emotion inside me. I opened my folder, my voice terrifyingly steady. Good morning, Ms. Sterling. Regarding the upgrade plan for the smart office system, the IT department recommends a 3-phase implementation. Throughout the entire presentation, Ava's fingertips traced the edge of the desk, her knuckles white. I could feel her gaze trying to meet mine, but I deliberately avoided it. She raised her hand several times as if to interrupt, but I ignored her. That concludes the IT department's report. Thank you, Ms. Sterling. When I finished, I closed my folder and turned to leave without a backward glance. Leo, she finally cried out. The other people in the room looked at her, confused. My hand was on the doorknob. I paused for a single second, but I did not turn back. The lights were on at home. When I opened the door, Ava Sterling was already there. She had changed back into her loungewear, her hair let down loosely, as if trying to erase the image of the formidable CEO from earlier. The table was set with my favorite barbecue ribs and seared salmon, steam rising from the plates. It looked like any other ordinary evening we had shared. But how could anything be ordinary now? The woman I had shared a bed with for 3 years, who complained about grocery prices and insisted on taking the subway to save money, was the billionaire heiress and CEO of Sterling Enterprises. What? The word was forced from between my teeth. Ava Sterling. I had to call her that now. Took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Leo. I wanted to find someone who loved me for me, not for my money or my status. So, I tested you. So you lied to me for 3 years. My voice started to shake. You watched me work myself to death, taking the late-night bus to save a few bucks on an Uber, eating ramen for a month to afford your birthday gift. Did you find it amusing? It wasn't like that, she said, stepping forward eagerly. I stepped back, avoiding her. I needed to be sure you were real. So many people have come after my money. I had to be careful. I let out a bitter, humorless laugh. Careful? Do you have any idea what I gave up? Christian asked me to go in on a startup with him, and I said no because you wanted a stable life. A company in Austin offered me a huge salary last year, and I turned it down because you were afraid a long-distance relationship wouldn't work. My voice rose, and now you're telling me this was all just a goddamn test. A flicker of an unreadable emotion crossed her face. Leo, I admit my methods were wrong, but I truly love you. These 3 years have been the most real time of my life. Real? I cut her off, pointing to the documents I printed and thrown on the floor. Then what are these? My promotions were denied, my bonuses were cut, my business plan was rejected. That was all you, wasn't it? I admit I vetoed your promotion, she finally said. But that was because I wanted you to gain more experience. Moving into management too soon wouldn't have been good for you. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I had to grip the wall to stay upright. Every setback, every injustice I'd faced in my career for 3 years had come from the person I trusted most. How considerate of you, Ms. Sterling, I sneered. And my business plan? You knew it was my dream for years, yet you killed it. Her eyes welled with tears. I didn't think it was the right time to start a business. The market was bad. The chances of success were too low. I wanted to protect you. Protect me? I almost laughed out loud. What do you think I am? Your pet? A project to be managed? Ava, marriage is an equal partnership, not your personal simulation game. Her tears finally fell. I know I was wrong, but you can't deny what we have. For the last 3 years, my care for you, everything I did for you, that was all real. Real feelings built on a foundation of lies. I shook my head. You know what the most ironic part is? I turned down that Austin opportunity because I wanted to give you a sense of security. Turns out you didn't need my protection at all. You were just enjoying the role play. Leo, don't be like this. Let's calm down and talk. She reached for me, but I violently shook her hand off. There's nothing to talk about. I turned and walked to the bedroom, dragging the long-forgotten suitcase from under the bed. I'd bought it right after college graduation. A faded sticker that read Startup Dream was still clinging to it. What are you doing? Ava's voice was laced with panic. Ending this joke, I began mechanically stuffing clothes into the suitcase. I want a divorce. No. She rushed over, pressing down on the lid. Leo, don't be impulsive. Listen to me. I can make it up to you. You'll be promoted tomorrow. No. You'll be made a director. Your startup, the company will fund it completely. Anything you want. I stopped what I was doing and looked up at her. On that familiar face, I saw not love, but fear, the fear of losing control. And that's the problem, I said quietly. You still don't get it. I don't want your money or your position. I wanted respect and trust. You can't give me either of those things. Her tears flowed freely now. Leo, please don't go. I was wrong. I'll die without you. I closed the suitcase and stood up. For the first time in 3 years, I saw the chasm between us with perfect clarity. She thought she could keep me with money and power, the same way she handled everything else in her life. But some things can't be bought. No, you won't, I said calmly. You'll continue to be CEO, Sterling, running your business empire. And I'm going to pursue the dream I should have started 3 years ago. Please. She knelt on the floor, her elegant robe pooling around her like a lost child. Once, that image would have broken my heart. Now, I only felt a profound exhaustion. I picked up the suitcase and took one last look around the small apartment we had shared for 3 years. In our wedding photo on the wall, we were smiling so happily. Looking at it now, I wondered how much of that happiness was real. A new beginning. My lawyer will send over the divorce papers, I said, turning toward the door. And don't worry, I only want what I earned. I'm not taking a dime of your money. Leo, she screamed from behind me. You'll regret this. Without my support, your startup will never succeed. I paused at the door, but didn't look back. Maybe, but at least this time, if I fail, it will be my own choice. Ava suddenly rushed forward, wrapping her arms around me tightly. Don't go, Leo. I was just angry. Stay, please. I'll invest in your dream. I don't need it, I said, slowly prying her fingers off me. I don't need an investment from someone who doesn't believe I can succeed. The sound of the door closing echoed in the late-night hallway. As the elevator descended, I felt a strange sense of release. After 3 years, I could finally breathe again. Stepping out of the building, the cold night air hit me. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in almost 3 years. Hello, Chris? It's me, Leo Martinez. I heard myself say, Hey, about that startup idea you mentioned a while back. I want in. Is the offer still on the table? After hanging up, I looked up at the window of the apartment we once shared. The light was still on, a shadowy figure standing by the window. I didn't wave. I just turned and walked toward the subway, toward my new life. This time, I was living for my dream. Chris Chen's apartment was cleaner than I expected. In the small 2-bedroom space, the most prominent feature was a massive whiteboard in the living room, covered in complex algorithms and market analysis charts. Welcome to Startup Headquarters, Chris said with a grin, taking my suitcase. He looked the same, just with a few more gray hairs at his temples. The logo on his t-shirt indicated he was now the CTO of a small tech company. Sorry to drop it on you like this, I said, looking around at the stacks of takeout containers and energy drink cans on the dining table. Looks like you're doing well. Getting by, he said, pouring me a beer. So what the hell happened? Last I heard, you were settling into married life. Now you're talking about startups. The beer was cold and bitter. How was I supposed to explain the absurdity of it all? I'm getting a divorce. Chris raised an eyebrow. What? I thought you two were disgustingly happy. Chris. Ava. Her full name is Ava Sterling. The name fell foreign on my tongue. Who? He froze for a second, then his eyes went wide. Wait, you mean the Ava Sterling? From Sterling Enterprises? I nodded, watching his jaw drop. It was almost funny. Wait, so for the last 3 years, you've been... Chris stared at me in disbelief. You're not kidding, are you? I shook my head. Do I look like I'm kidding? Man, you should be living the high life. Why would you want a divorce? Listen to me, bro. There's no shame in being a kept man. Chris said with mock seriousness. What's so great about it? I asked. Being treated like a lab rat, part of an experiment to see how long a man can last without knowing his wife is a billionaire. I took out my phone and showed him the photos of the documents. Chris scrolled through them, his expression shifting from shock to rage. She vetoed your promotion and monitored your communications? What the hell is this, a marriage or a CIA black op? A little of both, I guess, I said, finishing my beer. The point is, I'm free now, and I want to talk about that old business plan. Chris's eyes lit up. He jumped up, ran to his study, and came back with a laptop. You came at the perfect time. On the screen was a clean interface displaying a complex algorithmic model. Remember that intelligent supply chain system we designed? I've been refining it. This version can already. He launched into a passionate explanation of the technical details. Listening to him, I felt the blood begin to boil in my veins again. For the first time in 3 years, I felt a long-lost sense of passion and hope. How much seed money do we need? I asked. Chris scratched his head. $500,000 could get us to a beta version. The problem is... What's the problem? Finding clients, he sighed. Big corporations won't risk using a startup's product, and our algorithm needs real-world data to learn. I thought for a moment. I know a few people in the supply chain department at Sterling Enterprises. Maybe. No way. Chris cut me off sharply. We can't have anything to do with Ava Sterling. From what you've told me, she'll swallow us whole and spit out the bones. He was right. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Sorry, force of habit. I'll find other companies to contact. That night, I slept on Chris's sofa. It was the most peaceful night's sleep I'd had in years. In the morning, the vibration of my phone woke me. The screen read, Mark Reynolds, director. I hesitated, then answered. Leo, where are you? Mark's voice was so loud it hurt my ear. The whole company is looking for you. I took a personal day, I said, frowning. A personal day? Buddy, you've just been promoted to general manager of the tech division. The appointment ceremony is at 10, and the CEO is personally attending. What? Stop playing dumb. HR said the order came directly from Ms. Sterling. You jumped 3 ranks, your salary's doubled, and you're getting stock options. Didn't you get the email? Where are you? I'll send a car. I hung up, my hand trembling. I opened my phone. There was an unread email from corporate. Effective immediately, Mr. Leo Martinez is promoted to general manager of the technology division. Annual salary will be adjusted to $1,200,000 with accompanying stock options. Ava Sterling moved faster than I thought. My phone rang again immediately. It was an unknown number. I answered, and a woman's voice said, Mr. Martinez, good morning. This is Jennifer from the Sterling Enterprises Legal Department. Ms. Sterling asked me to contact you regarding the divorce. She would like to meet with you in person this afternoon. Tell her to have the papers drawn up and sent to my lawyer, I said coldly. Mr. Martinez. The lawyer hesitated. Ms. Sterling said that if you attend the appointment ceremony today, she is willing to discuss the divorce proceedings with you in detail. I hung up and threw the phone onto the sofa. Chris emerged from his bedroom, rubbing his eyes. Who was that so early? Your wife. Yes, Ava Sterling, I said with a bitter smile, tossing him the phone. She promoted me. General manager of the tech division. Chris let out a low whistle. Whoa, that's a hell of a price tag. He clapped me on the shoulder. Maybe you should just take the deal. She's your wife, after all. You're going to see her around. It's not a price, it's a leash, I said, getting up to put on my jacket. I have to go to the office to get my things. Want me to come with you? Chris asked. I shook my head. No, this is something I have to do myself. The lobby of Sterling Enterprises was busier than usual. The receptionist's eyes went wide when she saw me. Mr. Martinez, congratulations. Ms. Sterling is waiting for you on the 28th floor. I walked straight to the elevators, feeling eyes on me from all directions. Envy, confusion, but mostly calculation. Who was this guy who had shot up the ranks overnight? My desk had been cleared out. My computer and personal effects were gone. Mark Reynolds came jogging over. Leo, Mr. Martinez. Your office is on the 28th floor. They've already moved your things up. I'm just here to get my stuff, I said calmly. Don't joke around. Ms. Sterling has been waiting all morning. All the company executives are in the conference room. He lowered his voice. Dude, who did you connect with? I didn't answer, just turned and walked toward the elevator. The 28th floor was executive territory, a place I had never set foot. When the doors opened, Sarah Jennings was already waiting. Mr. Martinez, this way, please. She led me down a wide corridor lined with offices bearing the names of VPs and directors. The door to the conference room at the end was slightly ajar. I could hear Ava Sterling's voice, critiquing some project. Sarah knocked lightly. Ms. Sterling, Mr. Martinez is here. The conversation inside stopped abruptly. The door opened fully, revealing a dozen executives seated around a long table, all of them staring at me. At the head of the table sat Ava Sterling, dressed in an ivory white suit, her makeup flawless. She looked perfect. Leo, you're here, she said with a smile, as if nothing had ever happened between us. Please have a seat. She gestured to the empty chair at her right hand. I remained standing. I'm here for my personal belongings. The air in the room turned to ice. Ava's smile froze for a second before she recovered. Everyone, could you please give us a few minutes? The executives quickly filed out. Sarah Jennings, the last to leave, discreetly closed the door behind her. Ava carefully walked over to me. "Leo, don't be angry," she said, reaching across the table to gently tug on my sleeve. "I'm sorry, honey. It was my fault. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The severance, it was my fault. Can you forgive me?" she pleaded. "There's no need," I said flatly, placing my resignation letter on her massive mahogany desk. "I'm here today to resign and to discuss when we can finalize the divorce. After that, I'm gone." Her eyes flickered to the envelope, and her lips twitched. "Leo, we can talk about this." She walked around the desk toward me, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "I was emotional yesterday. I know what I did was wrong. It was my fault. That's why I prepared a new position for you. If you don't like the tech division, I can make you the VP of Innovation, reporting directly to me. How does that sound?" "Look." She pulled a gold embossed folder from a drawer and opened it to the first page. I glanced at it. It was indeed a promotion notice. The annual salary was more than 10 times my current one. "And this card," she said, taking a bank card from the drawer. "There's $500,000 in here. If it's not enough, I can deposit $50,000 every month. You can. And, Leo," she pushed a blank check toward me. "I know you want to start your own company. I'll invest. You can fill in any amount you want. Invest in any idea you have. Of course," she added, "it would be best if you developed it within the Sterling ecosystem." I stared at the thin piece of paper, the Sterling Enterprises logo gleaming on it. I looked at that check, so light yet so heavy, and I suddenly laughed. 3 years ago, an opportunity like this would have made me ecstatic. Now it just filled me with a deep sense of sorrow. "So, this is your solution? Buy me off with money and a title?" "It's not a bribe," she said, her voice finally rising. Her perfectly manicured nails left an indentation on the check. "I'm just trying to compensate you. And this is an opportunity you deserve. Leo, your performance over the last 3 years has been outstanding. It was my fault for wanting you to build more foundational experience. What I deserve." I picked up the check, and as her eyes lit up, I slowly tore it in half. "You were the one holding me back," I said with a cold smile. "What?" A sudden crisis of conscience. "What I deserved was the promotion you should have given me 3 years ago, the business plan you should have approved 2 years ago, and the basic respect and trust a husband deserves." The pieces of the check fluttered from my fingers like pale, anemic snow. Ava's face fell with them. "I know I was wrong." She suddenly grabbed my wrist, and I was shocked to feel her hand trembling. "Leo, give me a chance to make it up to you. We can start over. I was going to tell you the truth on our anniversary, I swear. I just never thought you'd find out first. Can't you just forget the last 3 years?" "Forget?" I pulled my hand away. "Forget that you manipulated my career like I was a puppet on a string? Forget that you treated me like a lab rat?" A look of panic I had never seen before appeared in her eyes. "It wasn't like that. I was just afraid of losing you." Her voice grew smaller, eventually breaking into a sob. "If you had known who I was from the beginning, I just wanted to find someone who genuinely loved me. And you were afraid I didn't? That I was only with you for your money." I sneered. "So you concocted this lie, the 6-year test? We dated for 3 years and were married for 3. After 6 years, you still couldn't tell if I was sincere?" She staggered back as if struck, a few strands of hair escaping from her perfect chignon and trembling against her cheek. "We can start over. Forget the misunderstandings. I can give you the platform, the resources, and continue to be your puppet, my project controlled by you." I took a step back. "No, thank you. I'm sorry, honey." "Tell me, Ava," I said, stepping closer. "In these past 3 years, was there even one day where you loved me as your true self?" Tears finally breached the dam of her perfect makeup. "Every single day," she whispered, pulling a thin chain from around her neck. "I'd always assumed it was just a decorative necklace. On it hung a small, delicate key. This is the key to the penthouse apartment in the Sterling Tower. I've worn it every day since we got married. I was waiting every day for you to be ready to accept all of me." I stared at the small key glinting in the light. My chest felt like it had been hit with a sledgehammer. How ironic. She kept the key to her wealth close to her heart, but locked her wedding ring away in a drawer. "It's too late," I said, stepping back. "If you won't agree to the divorce, my lawyer will be in touch." Her eyes began to turn red. "Leo, what will it take for you to not divorce me? What do you want? Money? The company? Name it. I can negotiate anything. I'll agree to anything." "I want you to respect my choice," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "I want a divorce." "Then what do you want me to do?" Her voice trembled. "Beg on my knees? You still don't get it, do you?" I gently pushed her hand away. "The problem isn't the money. It's the respect. You still think you can solve everything with a check." "Leo," she cried, rushing to block my path. Tears had streaked her makeup, revealing faint dark circles under her eyes. I'll die without you. Sign the papers, I said, turning to the door. My lawyer will be in touch. This was the first time since I'd known her that I had ever seen her so completely undone. The poised, elegant Ava Sterling was gone. In her place was just a desperate woman. Leo Martinez. Her voice suddenly turned sharp. Do you think starting a business is easy? Without my support, you won't even be able to afford to rent an office. I stopped at the door, but didn't turn back. Then let me fail. At least it will be my own failure. ####. The dream rebooted walking out of the building. The sunlight was so bright it hurt my eyes. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Chris. How'd it go? You still alive? I replied, alive, and more determined than ever to do this. Let's talk tonight. That night, we stayed up revising the business plan. At 3 a.m, my old phone suddenly received a text message from Ava, using her Ava number. I was wrong, Leo. I hope you can forgive me. I won't bother you anymore. I wish you happiness. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure if I could believe it. But either way, my path was set. What's up? Chris asked, looking up from his code. I showed him the phone. He whistled. She surrendered? I don't know, I said, shaking my head. But regardless, we start pitching to investors tomorrow. Chris grinned. I bet Sterling Enterprises' competitors would be very interested. Outside, the first rays of dawn pierced the darkness. For the first time in 3 years, I felt that the future was full of possibilities, not granted by someone else's charity, but created with my own 2 hands. I crashed on Chris's couch for a solid week. The fan on my laptop whirred constantly, the screen displaying the 27th revision of our business plan. Hey, Chris, look at this section on the tech architecture. I turned, only to find him frowning at his phone. Another one, he said, showing me the screen. Third headhunter to call this week, offering me $150,000 to work overseas. I gave a cold smile. She's persistent. I dug out an old hard drive from 3 years ago and found the original version of the plan that Ava had rejected. I remembered her curled up next to me, her finger tracing the screen as she said, "This business model is too idealistic. Your market research is insufficient. The technical implementation is too difficult." Looking at it now, every point she had marked in red was now at the forefront of the industry. She had seen its potential all along. She just deliberately kept me chained to a mediocre job. Chris's sofa was even more uncomfortable than it looked. As I turned over, a spring dug directly into my lower back, waking me completely. Morning light streamed through a gap in the curtains. I squinted at my phone, 6:23 a.m. The hum of the coffee machine came from the kitchen. I rubbed my back and sat up to see Chris already at his laptop, surrounded by empty Red Bull cans. "Morning, boss," he said without looking up. "Sleep well." Like I was on a bed of nails, I said, stretching my sore back. "You're always up this early?" "Entrepreneurs don't have schedules." He pushed a mug of black coffee toward me. "Try this. Indonesian import. How does it compare to the stuff in the Sterling Enterprises executive lounge?" The coffee was bitter with a fruity aftertaste. It was good. I looked around the cramped apartment, comparing it to Ava's penthouse that overlooked the entire central business district, and I laughed. At least this coffee doesn't come with a side of control issues. Chris grinned and turned his laptop toward me. "Check this out." On the screen was a document filled with red annotations. The business plan I had written 3 years ago. But the comments. A knot formed in my stomach. ####. Old friends, new alliances, your ex-wife's revision suggestions, Chris said with a sneer. I recovered them from the company's server. She didn't just reject your plan. She systematically dismantled every single innovative point. I leaned closer, the cool, professional critiques stinging my eyes. Market analysis is overly optimistic. Actual capacity is less than 30% of projections. Technical roadmap carries patent risks. Recommend abandonment. Team lacks relevant experience. Success probability is below industry average. Each comment struck at the core value of the plan, yet was disguised as objective evaluation. The most ironic part was the stamp at the bottom. Sterling Enterprises Innovation Investment Committee, dated just 1 week after I had submitted the plan, full of hope. "Did she ever tell you this evaluation existed?" Chris asked. I shook my head, my throat tight. At the time, my boss had just vaguely said it didn't get approved upstairs, and I accepted it, believing my ideas truly weren't good enough. "The good news is," Chris said, tapping a few keys, "every point she rejected has now become our advantage." A new set of charts appeared on the screen. See, she thought the market was small because she only counted traditional corporations. But in the last 3 years, the demand for digitalization among small and medium-sized enterprises has exploded. They're our target audience. Listening to Chris, I slowly regained my focus. He was right. The blind spots in Ava's corporate evaluation were precisely where the market opportunities now lay. How much money do we need to start? I asked. 50,000 could get us a beta, but ideally, we need 150 to last the first 6 months, Chris said, scratching his head. The problem is, if we go to investors now, they'll call Ava Sterling first. I finished his thought. In this city's business circle, Sterling Enterprises' influence was enough to make most investors hesitate. Chris suddenly slapped the table. Wait, there's a startup pitch competition next week. The host is a new VC fund back from Silicon Valley. They probably don't have ties to Ava. We could. The doorbell rang. Chris went to answer it and came back with a courier envelope. It's for you. I tore it open. A stack of documents slid out, divorce papers. Attached was a note. I've signed. Good luck. Ava Sterling. Her handwriting was clean and efficient, devoid of emotion. I flipped to the last page and saw her elegant signature. The terms of the settlement were surprisingly generous. A 50-50 split of all shared assets, including a small condo she owned. Is she letting you go? Chris asked, confused. I scanned every clause, searching for a hidden trap, but found nothing. It was too easy. It wasn't Ava's style. I don't know, I said, setting the papers aside. But either way, we need to prepare for that pitch. For the next week, we worked like we were back in college, fueled by caffeine and ambition. Chris focused on the tech architecture while I polished the business plan. During the day, I visited potential early clients. At night, we huddled over the coffee table, revising our pitch deck. The Spartan environment was invigorating. Without a fancy office or support staff, every decision was ours alone. The night before the pitch competition, we were doing a final rehearsal when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Victor Shaw, a partner at a well-known venture capital firm. Mr. Shaw, I answered, puzzled. Leo, I heard you're starting a company. Victor's voice was suspiciously enthusiastic. Why didn't you say so sooner? I happen to have some free time tomorrow. We should meet. After hanging up, Chris and I looked at each other. How did he find out? Chris asked. No idea, but it can't be good. I searched for Victor Shaw's recent activity online and found a news item from 2 weeks ago. Sterling Enterprises had entered into a strategic partnership with his firm. It's a trap, Chris said through gritted teeth. I dug deeper and found something even more troubling on the list of judges for tomorrow's competition. Of the 3 judges, 2 had business dealings with Sterling Enterprises. Are we still going? Chris asked. The discovery made my stomach clench. Was this another one of Ava's moves? Yes, I said after a long moment, closing my laptop. But we're going to do it our way. The next morning, the auditorium at the Venture Capital Tower was packed. Chris and I were scheduled to present 7th. The entrepreneurs before us talked about market size and exit strategies, while the judges nodded politely. Next up, Synergy AI. As we walked on stage, I saw Victor Shaw sitting at the end of the judges' table. He gave me a knowing smile. In the back row, a woman in a baseball cap was taking notes, her head down. Her profile looked uncannily like Ava's assistant. Good morning, I said, adjusting the microphone. Today, we're not going to use a PowerPoint. A murmur went through the audience. Chris brought a monitor on stage and connected his laptop. We'd like to show you something a little more concrete. For the next 20 minutes, we skipped the standard business plan pitch and gave a live demo of our system's core functions. Chris typed in a few lines of code to bring up the test interface, while I used a real-world case study to show how our algorithm could optimize a supply chain. This module can increase inventory turnover for small businesses by 40%, I said, pointing at the data flickering on screen. A traditional system offers 15% at best. The judge's expressions changed from polite interest to genuine surprise. Victor Shaw started checking his phone frequently, and the woman in the back row stopped writing. During the Q&A, a judge asked about our patents. Chris was prepared. Our core technology is protected by 3 patents, all filed under our personal names, with no connection to any former employers. Finally, Victor Shaw spoke. Mr. Martinez, your tech is impressive, but a startup needs more than technology. It needs resources and connections. Have you considered seeking support from a strategic investor? The implication was clear. I smiled. We welcome any investor who recognizes the value of our technology. But Synergy AI's destiny will remain in the hands of the people who created it. When our pitch ended, we received the loudest applause of the day. Several genuine tech investors immediately surrounded us to exchange business cards. Victor Shaw and the suspicious assistant quietly slipped away. Did we do it? Chris asked on the subway home, still in disbelief. It's just the first step, I reminded him, but I couldn't stop a smile from spreading across my face. It was the first time in 3 years I felt a pure sense of accomplishment, not granted by someone else, but earned. The victory was short-lived. The next morning, Chris burst into the living room. "We've got a problem." He pulled up a popular tech forum. The top post was titled, "Warning, the ex-wife startup scam. Inside story of a former exec using his ex's resources." The article didn't name names, but anyone in the industry would know it was about me. That son of a... Chris was shaking with anger. I read the insinuation-filled article calmly. "This feels like Ava's style." In the following days, the investors who had shown interest all backed out. A client who had agreed to provide trial data suddenly changed their mind. Worse, Chris discovered someone was trying to poach our core engineers. "We're finished," Chris said on Friday night, slumped on the sofa amidst a sea of empty beer cans. "No funding, no clients, and now we can't even hold on to our team." I stared at the bank account balance on my laptop. The money from the divorce settlement could last us another 3 months, but without a breakthrough. "Just hang on," I said, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. The doorbell rang. Chris stumbled to the door and returned with a business card. "Someone wants to see you. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Four Seasons Hotel." The card had only a name, Arthur Lynn, and a phone number. On the back, handwritten, was a note, "Interested in Synergy AI." Arthur Lynn. I frowned. Never heard of him. Who cares? Chris was re-energized. Right now, if he has a check, I'd take an investment from the devil himself. The next day, I went to the Four Seasons alone. Waiting for me in a top-floor suite was a lean man in his 60s. He wore a simple, tailored suit and was brewing high-end coffee. "Mr. Martinez, please sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Try this. Single-origin geisha. You can't get the real stuff just anywhere." I cautiously took a sip. The coffee was complex and aromatic. "Mr. Lynn, what area do you invest in?" "I invest in people, not projects," he said, refilling my cup. "Especially people with backbone." I became alert. "You know Ava Sterling?" He smiled faintly. "I watch her grow up. Her father, Edward, was an old friend of mine." Seeing my expression change, he held up a hand. "Don't worry, I'm not here to play mediator. In fact, I admire you for refusing her goodwill." "Then, Mr. Lynn, since you know her so well, perhaps you know about the recent smear campaign against us." "It wasn't her," Arthur Lynn said, shaking his head. "Knowing her, she wouldn't resort to such crude tactics. It was one of her underlings, trying to curry favor. Ava only found out this morning and had the articles pulled." I gave a cold laugh. "She's always fixing things after the fact. Everyone has their limitations," the old man sighed. "Ava was taught from a young age that trust is a liability and love requires control. Her father, well, that's another story. I'm here today to talk about an investment. Why should I trust you? Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The counteroffensive because you have no other choice," he said bluntly. "Within 3 days, Sterling Enterprises will announce a product preview with technology similar to yours. With their resources, they can have a basic version ready in 2 months. By then." I gripped my coffee cup. This was exactly Ava's style. If you can't control it, destroy it. "What do you want?" I asked. "Very simple," Arthur Lynn said, pushing a check across the table. $3 million for a 20% stake. I won't interfere with operations. I'll only send a financial overseer." The number on the check was tempting, but what's the catch? "No hidden clauses," he smiled. "Only a piece of advice. Register the company in the Cayman Islands and transfer the patents to a personal holding company. That way, if things change later, your core technology will be protected." The advice was so specific, it seemed to anticipate Ava's next possible move. I looked into the old man's eyes. "Who are you, really? Why are you helping us?" "Let's just say it's an old man's appreciation for the next generation," he said, standing to see me out. "The check is good until 5 p.m. today. You can have someone look into my background, though you won't find much." Just then, the suite door opened, and a young woman in a beige pantsuit came in with a tray. "Uncle, your blood pressure medication." The pen in my hand clattered onto the table. The woman looked up, and we both froze. It was Jenna Lee, a girl from the computer science department in college. We had teamed up for a hackathon once. "Leo Martinez?" Her eyes were wide. "Is that really you?" "Mr. Lynn looked between us. You two know each other?" Jenna put the tray down, speaking a mile a minute. "He's my senior. Our campus smart assistant system won first place in the regional finals." She turned to me. "I heard you want to work at Sterling Enterprises?" My throat was tight. "Just quit." "That's great." Her eyes lit up. "I'm looking for an internship. Is your team hiring?" "Mr. Lynn suddenly laughed. "Jenna is a computer science whiz. She could certainly be useful at a tech company." He tapped my business plan. How about this? I'll add another $1 million to the investment, and you let Jenna join to learn the ropes. After I signed the contract, Jenna chased me to the elevator. Hey, senior, let me get your number. As she scanned my QR code, I noticed her phone case was printed with the phrase, "Never settle," our team motto from Hackathon. Leaving the hotel, I immediately called a friend in venture capital to ask about Arthur Lin. The response was surprising. The man was one of the first internet investors from the 90s. His background was a mystery, but his instincts were legendary. Nearly every company he backed was a massive success. The strangest part was that he had retired from the scene a decade ago and rarely made personal appearances. If this guy wants to invest in you, you get on your knees and take the money, my friend joked. Back at the apartment, Chris and I reviewed the investment agreement carefully. There were no traps. At 4:50 p.m., I called Arthur Lin. We accept your offer. A wise choice, he said, his voice smiling. The funds will arrive tomorrow. By the way, I suggest you find a new office. I know a great spot in the tech park that just became available. After hanging up, Chris and I looked at each other and grinned. Outside, the sunset painted the city in shades of gold. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like my destiny was truly in my own hands, regardless of where this opportunity had come from. The office on the 17th floor of the tech park was a massive improvement over Chris's apartment. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the ant-like pedestrians below, holding the newly issued business license for Synergy AI Technologies, Inc. Arthur Lin's investment had cleared 3 days ago, and we immediately leased this prime office space. Mr. Martinez, your coffee, Jenna said with a cheerful grin, placing a mug on my desk. The title felt strange. 2 weeks ago, I was a monitored middle manager at Sterling Enterprises. Now, I was the CEO of a startup. Thanks, but you can call me Leo, I said, taking a sip. Across the office, Chris was in a heated discussion with our new tech team, a whiteboard covered in flowcharts behind him. For the first time in 3 years, work felt pure. My phone vibrated. The caller ID was Victor Shaw. The VC partner had called 3 times since the pitch competition. I hesitated, then answered. Leo, congrats on the new office. Victor's voice was overly friendly. I hear you snagged the best spot in the tech park. Mr. Lin must think very highly of you. I gripped the phone tighter. We hadn't announced our new address or Arthur Lin's investment. You have good sources, Victor. Haha, it's a small world, he said with a dry laugh. Actually, I'm calling to mediate. Ms. Sterling asked me to pass along a message. She's willing to acquire Synergy AI at double your current valuation. You can stay on as CEO. Thank Ms. Sterling for a generous offer. I cut him off, but Synergy is not for sale. Don't be so quick to refuse, Victor said, his voice dropping. You know Sterling is launching their chain link system next week, right? The functionality is almost identical to yours, but they have an established sales channel and client base. I hung up, my palms sweating. Chris walked over, frowning. Victor Shaw again. Sterling is launching a competing product. I searched online and found a rumor on an industry blog. Sterling Enterprises was about to launch Chainlink, an intelligent supply chain system for small businesses, marketed as lightweight, efficient, and affordable. How could they do that? Jenna muttered. Chris's face went pale. It's not possible to move that fast. Unless they stole our idea from the beginning. I finished. I pulled up the Sterling Enterprises website. On the R&D team page, there were several familiar names. Engineers who had previously expressed interest in Chris's algorithm. That bastard Lou. Chris slammed his fist on the table. He bought me drinks 2 months ago, asked a ton of technical questions. We immediately called a team meeting. The young engineer's expressions went from anger to concern. They have deep pockets. How can we compete? Our front-end developer asked, voicing everyone's fear. I didn't answer directly. Instead, I pulled up a photo of Chris and me from 3 years ago on the projector. 2 college kids huddled over a beat-up laptop in a dorm room. Back then, we had nothing but a bunch of crazy ideas, I said, then switched to a photo of our new office. Look where we are now. Sterling can copy our technology, but they can't steal our creativity or our determination. Chris took over, and their system is bound to have problems. Lou only understood the surface level. They can't replicate the core algorithm. The meeting boosted morale, but I knew spirit alone wasn't enough. Jenna was sitting cross-legged by the window, putting anime stickers on a server case. My good luck ritual, she explained seriously to the tech team. Don't knock it. At Google, I put Hatsune Miku stickers on the servers, and processing efficiency went up 20%. A young engineer named Sam whispered to me, Sir, did Miss Lee really get nominated for a Turing Award? Before I could answer, Jenna tossed a USB drive at him. See for yourself. Paper number 37 in the archive. By the way, there are 3 potential bugs in the code you wrote last week. I highlighted them. Sam's face turned bright red as he took the drive. She bounced over to me, her ponytail brushing my chin. I have an idea about Avis Sterling's corporate espionage. Want to play dirty? I left a backdoor in Sterling's supply chain system. Absolutely not, Chris and I said in unison. Just kidding, she said, sticking her tongue out. But she secretly typed a note on my tablet. Their system really does have a vulnerability. We can use it at a critical moment. I quietly closed the tablet. That night, Chris and I stayed late to strategize. Jenna volunteered to stay too. We have to speed up, I said, looking at the calendar. If we can launch a beta before Sterling's release, we could seize the advantage. We need at least 6 more weeks, Chris said, shaking his head. And we lack the industry data to train our model. Then let's use my idea. Hit them through their vulnerability. Jenna chimed in. Jenna, please. I cut her off. Just for a little while. Can you be serious? Fine. You're no fun, she muttered, walking away. Watching her, I couldn't help but smile. An idea came to me. I thought of an old colleague at Sterling, a guy named Zhao who is now in charge of the supply chain data department. After some hesitation, I made the call. Old Zhao, it's Leo Martinez. I have a big favor to ask. Half an hour later, I hung up, relieved. Zhao had agreed to provide some anonymized data, purely as a friend. Consider it payback for all the times you covered for me at work, he'd said. Under siege the next day, the problem started. First, the building management informed us of an emergency electrical inspection, forcing us to close for the day. The day after, 2 potential clients called to vaguely postpone their partnership talks. The worst came at noon, a letter from Sterling's legal team, accusing us of potential trade secret infringement and demanding we cease all related development. This is a goddamn threat. Chris paced the office angrily. I have a way to distract them. Just use my... Jenna started, handing me a coffee. Jenna, stop, Chris interrupted. We're not there yet. I read the letter carefully and noticed a detail. They didn't file for an injunction. They're just threatening to sue. What's the difference? Chris asked. Jenna looked at me too. It means they don't have enough evidence, I analyzed. If they really had proof of infringement, the first thing they do is get a court order to freeze our operations. As we were discussing our next move, a junior employee ran in. Mr. Martinez, Chun and Lee from the tech team need to see you. The 2 young engineers came in, looking uncomfortable. Chun spoke first. Sir, someone from Sterling Enterprises contacted us. They offered us double our salary. You're leaving? Chris asked bluntly. No, Lee shook his head quickly. We refused, but they said synergy won't last 3 months, and we shouldn't go down with a sinking ship. Wow, good for you, kid, Jenna said, patting Lee on the shoulder. Stick with me. This company has a future. Her comment made everyone manage a weak smile. Thank you for your loyalty, I said. We can't match that salary right now, but I promise you, when this company goes public, the stock options we promised will be worth much more than anything Sterling can offer. We know, sir, Lee said. We believe in the product. We're just worried others might be tempted. We'll handle it, I assured them. After they left, we fell into silence. Ava's assault was more ferocious than I'd anticipated, a full-spectrum attack on our team, our clients, and even our work environment. We have to fight back, Chris said through gritted teeth. Yeah, we really need to hit back at that witch. Jenna's eyes lit up. Attack their backdoor? I shook my head. No, getting into a fight will just drain our energy and time. We stick to the plan, launch the product, and let it speak for itself. The next 2 weeks were hell. We re-engineered our product roadmap, focusing on features Sterling couldn't easily copy. The team worked overtime voluntarily, fueled by a sense of underdog defiance against a corporate giant. During this time, Arthur Lynn appeared once mysteriously. After listening to our plight, he simply said, "Focus on the product. I'll handle the rest." The next day, the building management retracted the inspection notice, apologizing for a communication error. Sterling's chain link system launched on schedule with a massive media blitz. We nervously watched the launch event and saw that its core functions were indeed similar to ours. But the execution was clumsy, especially the optimization module, which was clearly designed by an amateur. This won't survive its first real-world client, Chris predicted. Sure enough, criticism of Chainlink soon appeared on industry forums. One user complained, "The UI is nice, but its optimization suggestions are worse than my own gut feelings." Meanwhile, our beta version received rave reviews in a limited release. The clients Oljao introduced gave us detailed feedback, but the overall consensus was game-changing innovation. Just as things were looking up, An unexpected discovery changed everything. Late one night, while reviewing patent filings, Jenna suddenly shouted, "I found it!" She pointed to a diagram in one of Sterling's early patents. "Look at this parameter. To avoid infringing on our algorithm patent, they used an alternative solution, but it has a serious flaw. When inventory turnover exceeds a certain threshold, the system gives completely wrong advice." We immediately simulated the scenario. The results were shocking. Under specific conditions, Chainlink would advise clients to hoard massive quantities of slow-moving products, leading to catastrophic financial consequences. "This could ruin them," Chris said, his eyes gleaming. "We just need a client to trigger this scenario, and then leak it to the press and destroy Sterling's reputation." I finished but shook my head. "No, we're not doing that. Leo, they brought this on themselves." "And then what?" I asked. "Will destroying Ava's career make me happy? We started this company to prove ourselves, not for revenge. Besides, it would distract us from our goal, which is to build our own strength, not attack our enemies." Chris argued for a while, but eventually conceded. We did, however, decide to prepare a detailed technical analysis in case Sterling continued its attacks. Surprisingly, the next week was quiet. Sterling suddenly ceased all actions against us. Even Victor Shaw stopped calling. An industry publication even ran an objective comparison of Chainlink and Synergy's tech, with the conclusion in our favor. On Friday night, as I was working late, I received a text from an unknown number. "Vulnerability patched. Thank you for your discretion, Ava." I stared at the message for a long time and didn't reply. But somewhere deep inside, the anger I had held onto for so long seemed to loosen its grip. The company held a small party to celebrate our 2-month anniversary. As the team ate pizza, one of the interns shouted, "Look at the news." The financial channel was broadcasting a surprise announcement from Sterling Enterprises. CEO Ava Sterling was temporarily stepping down from day-to-day management, with the COO taking over. On camera, she looked tired but composed, mentioning a need to handle personal matters. "Did she give up?" Chris asked, confused. I shook my head, a strange feeling in my gut. Ava wasn't one to give up easily, unless she was finally starting to reconsider her actions. But was she capable of that? After the party, Arthur Lynn paid a surprise visit. He looked at the empty pizza boxes with a satisfied smile. "Do you know why I invested in you?" he asked suddenly. "Because you saw the potential of our technology?" I ventured. "Because you remind me of myself 40 years ago," he said, looking out the window. "Back then, Edward Sterling and I were just like you two, working late in a tiny office, fueled by instant noodles. Until..." He paused. "Until what?" Chris asked. "Until power and money corrupted our original vision," the old man sighed. "Edward chose the path of controlling everything. I chose to leave. Seeing you maintain your principles under Sterling's pressure, I'm very pleased." He left a folder behind. Inside was an old, faded photograph of 2 young men standing proudly in front of a sign that read Sterling Lynn Technologies. I recognized a young Arthur Lynn. The other man bore a striking resemblance to Ava. On the back was written, "Edward and Arthur, Summer 1995. 1 year in." Chris and I stared at each other. The identity of our mysterious investor was finally clear. He wasn't just an old family friend, but Ava's father's original partner. Her Uncle Arthur. "What kind of family drama have we stumbled into?" Chris asked jokingly. I didn't answer because my phone was ringing. It was our lawyer. Sterling Enterprises was withdrawing all legal threats and, unexpectedly, sending a business collaboration proposal. "They've expressed a willingness to explore a partnership on an equal footing," the lawyer relayed. "Ms. Sterling specifically emphasized that this is a purely business consideration, and they will completely respect your decision." Hanging up, I walked to the window. The city lights twinkled below. One of them belonged to Ava. What was she thinking? Had she truly learned to respect others? Or was this a new, more sophisticated plan? Whatever it was, Synergy AI was on solid ground now. And this time, no one could make the decision for me. The office finally quieted down around 2 a.m. The team was asleep in chairs they'd pushed together. Jenna appeared with a couple of beers. "Celebratory drink," she said, popping one open. Foam fizzed over her fingers. "Try it. It's a craft IPA. Bitter, then sweet." I took the beer, our fingers brushing. She quickly pulled her hand back, wiping it on her jeans, suddenly quiet. The moonlight cast a soft glow on her usually animated face. "What are you looking at?" she asked, noticing my gaze. The tips of her ears turned slightly red. "Didn't know you could be shy," I said with a smile, taking a sip. It was indeed bitter at first, then sweet. The negotiation Jenna suddenly leaned in close, so close I could smell the faint citrus scent in her hair. Leo, do you know why I quit my job at Google to come here? Her breath tickled my ear. It wasn't just for the algorithm. My heart skipped a beat. This proximity was dangerous, close enough to see the projection of her eyelashes in the moonlight. Just as the air grew thick, she pulled back, winking playfully. Of course, it was to piss off Ava Sterling. She bounced away to put a blanket on Chris, leaving me holding my beer, stunned. Condensation dripped down the can like an unfinished sigh. The numbers on the financial report were painful to look at. 4 months in, Synergy AI had a great product and our first clients, but we were burning through cash far faster than expected. How much do we have left? I asked Jenna, rubbing my temples. Less than 80,000, she said, pushing up her glasses. At our current burn rate, we have 3 weeks max. The air in the conference room grew heavy. 3 weeks. Then we wouldn't be able to make payroll. I looked at the faces around the table. Chris, our tech lead Sam, our marketing director. Worry was etched on every face. What about client payments? I asked. Our marketing director shook his head. The first batch of clients pays their final installment after 3 months of use. The new contracts all have long payment terms. What about Mr. Lin? Can he do another round? Sam asked hopefully. I remained silent. Arthur had made it clear last week. No more funding until we could prove a viable business model. Maybe. I can go talk to my uncle, Jenna said hesitantly. Let's adjourn for now, I said. Chris and I will figure something out. To get more money from Arthur, we had to prove our value, not just keep asking for handouts. After everyone left, Chris collapsed in his chair. Damn it, the product is amazing. Why can't we get paid? I gave a grim smile. Small businesses were our target market, but they were also the ones who delayed payments the most. And the large enterprise clients were all locked down by Sterling Enterprises. Maybe we could lower our valuation for the next funding round, Jenna suggested. I shook my head. The market's not great right now. A down round would be a death sentence. Besides, everyone in the VC world knows about our history with Sterling. No one wants to touch us. Just then, the receptionist knocked. Mr. Martinez, a Mr. Shaw from Sterling Enterprises is here. He says he's here to discuss a partnership and investment. Chris and I exchanged a look. Victor Shaw, Ava Sterling's mouthpiece. His appearance now was no coincidence. Send him in. Victor walked in, impeccably dressed, a triumphant smile on his face. He glanced around our modest office, his eyes lingering on the empty coffee station. Leo, Chris, long time no see. He got straight to the point. I hear you're having some cash flow problems? I sneered. Sterling's intelligence network is as efficient as ever. It's business, Victor said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. Ms. Sterling asked me to bring you an acquisition offer. Sterling Enterprises is willing to acquire Synergy AI at twice your last valuation, and we'll assume all your debt. You and Chris can stay on with double your salaries. I glanced at the offer. The number was generous, but as I read the fine print, my hands clenched. After the acquisition, all core patents will be transferred to Sterling Enterprises. I would have to sign a 5-year non-compete agreement. All major decisions would require board approval. Is this an acquisition or an annexation? I pushed the folder back. Victor's smile didn't falter. Be realistic, Leo. You won't last a month. It's better to exit gracefully than go bankrupt. We'd rather go bankrupt with dignity, Chris said suddenly, than get rich on our knees. Victor's smile twitched. I can understand youthful bravado, Chris, but Leo, you should know the rules of the game better. Ms. Sterling said this is your last chance. Last chance. The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 years ago, Ava had said the same thing to me when I'd asked for a transfer to our Austin office. I gave up the opportunity for her, and then, thank Ms. Sterling for her offer, I said, standing up. Synergy AI is not for sale. Victor shook his head as if looking at a foolish child. Pride won't solve your problems. I'll give you 24 hours to consider. The offer expires after that. After he left, Chris slammed his fist against the wall. That witch. She knew we were in trouble. He glanced at me sheepishly. Wow, Chris, that was some good cursing, Jenna said, nodding. Jenna, please, Chris said, exasperated. Can you just call me Chris? Sure thing, Chrissy, she replied. Chris just stared at her. Jenna's antics helped break the tension. We need to stay calm, I said. There has to be another way. We spent the rest of the afternoon contacting every investor and client we could think of. The results were disheartening. That evening, I stood alone at the office window. The city was a sea of lights, with the Sterling Tower shining brightest. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe I was just being stubborn. My phone vibrated. An unknown number. When I answered, a familiar voice made me freeze. Leo, it's me. Ava. Ms. Sterling. To what do I owe the pleasure? I used a formal tone to hide my racing heart. Leo, please don't be like that with me. I want to talk to you in person. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Not about the acquisition. About other possibilities for partnership. Isn't that what Victor is for? I said coldly. There was a pause. Victor doesn't know I'm calling you. In fact, he doesn't know I've revised the acquisition terms. I frowned. What do you mean? Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the coffee shop at the Langham Hotel, she said softly. Bring a list of your core needs. Let's talk. As business partners. After hanging up, I was lost in thought. What game was Ava playing now? Was this a new trap or... The next day, I went alone. The coffee shop was quiet. I chose a corner table and laid out my files, Synergy's core needs, funding, client access, patent protection. Sorry to keep you waiting. I looked up and my breath caught. Ava stood there, dressed in a simple white blouse and gray trousers, her hair in a practical ponytail. She looked almost exactly as she had when we first met, just with a few fine lines around her eyes. Ms. Sterling, I said, standing up. She gave a sad smile. We're not even on a first-name basis anymore. I didn't reply. She sat, and the waiter brought her black tea. No sugar, no milk. Her usual. First, I want to apologize for Victor's attitude, she began. He misinterpreted my intentions. Misinterpreted? Wasn't that acquisition offer approved by you? It was, but she pulled a new document from her bag. This is the proposal I actually wanted to make. I opened the folder. The title was Strategic Partnership Framework Agreement. The terms were completely different from yesterday's. Sterling would invest at market value for a 30% stake, with no controlling interest. The patents would remain with Synergy AI. They even offered to onboard several of their clients. What? I asked, suspicious. This doesn't do Sterling much good. Of course it does, she said, sipping her tea. Your algorithm is outperforming ours in the small business market, a sector Sterling has struggled to break into. It makes more sense to partner than to compete. It sounded logical, but I knew Ava. There have to be other conditions. She put down her cup and looked me in the eye. Only one. I want to formally apologize for the past. The sunlight streamed through the window, and I was surprised to see that her eyes no longer held their usual look of absolute control, but something else. Uncertainty. This unfamiliar vulnerability left me speechless. I used our marriage to deceive you. I manipulated your career. Those things are unforgivable, she said, her voice quiet but clear. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just hope for a chance to make amends. The boardroom, the apology was so sudden I didn't know how to react. All the anger and hurt from the past few months lodged in my throat. Why apologize now? I finally asked. She looked out the window. Because I've finally started to understand some things. Since I stepped down, I've done a lot of thinking. I examined the agreement again. There were no traps, but that made me even more uneasy. I need time to think about it, I finally said. Of course, she nodded. But your company's finances can't wait much longer, can they? Her words stung. Even an apology, she held all the cards. So this is still a threat? No, she said quickly. I'm just trying to help. By solving everything with money? I scoffed. You haven't changed at all. Her fingers tightened around her teacup. Then what do you want me to do? Watch you go bankrupt. If I have to go bankrupt to prove myself, then so be it, I said, standing up. At least it will be my own failure. Leo, she stood up too. Accepting help isn't a weakness. Why do you have to be so? Because this isn't help. I raised my voice, drawing glances from other patrons. This is just another form of control. 3 years ago, you blocked my promotion. Now you want to use an investment to keep controlling my life. The color drained from her face. Is that really what you think? What else am I supposed to think? I shot back. When have you ever respected my choices? The question hit its mark. I saw the hurt in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by defiance. Fine, she said, gathering her papers. If you'd rather go bankrupt than accept my charity, then have it your way. He won't be going bankrupt. Jenna appeared out of nowhere, linking her arm through mine. She flashed a toothy grin at Ava. Ms. Sterling, hello again. Ava's gaze fixed on our linked arms. Jenna, she said, her voice like ice. Don't you think that's a bit inappropriate? Oh, I'm with Leo now, Jenna said, leaning her head on my shoulder. I came to share some good news. We just had a term sheet from Sequoia Capital. Our Leo won't be going bankrupt after all. Ava's eyelashes fluttered. She looked at me, her eyes a storm of complex emotions. I see. It seems I was worried for nothing. As she turned to leave, her posture was still elegant and proud, but I could see her shoulders trembling slightly. Are you crazy? I pulled my arm away from Jenna. Since when did Sequoia? I was bluffing. Jenna pulled out a crumpled napkin with a poorly drawn VC logo on it. But Uncle Arthur really is in talks with a real firm. I pinched the bridge of my nose. How did you know I was here? She suddenly went quiet, fiddling with the hem of her lab coat. I was worried you'd get eaten alive by that woman. When she looked up, her normally cheerful eyes were glistening with tears. I told you, I'm very interested in pissing off Ava Sterling. How did that feel just now? So satisfying, right? I think her heart just broke. I rolled my eyes and walked out. What? Are you feeling sorry for her now? Jenna called after me. Hey, Leo, wait up. I wore heels for this. Back at the office, I told Chris what had happened. After hearing the terms of Ava's offer, he was surprisingly hesitant. You know, the terms are actually pretty good. If she's really changed. She hasn't. I said firmly, accept that deal, and Synergy becomes a Sterling subsidiary sooner or later. But bankruptcy, we're not there yet. Remembering what Jenna had said, I pulled out my phone. I'm going to try Arthur Lynn one more time. Surprisingly, Arthur answered right away. After listening to my predicament, he was silent for a moment, then said, come to my house. Arthur's house was an unassuming villa in the hills, but the inside was like a museum, filled with antique books, art, and a strange collection of technology awards. On his study wall was a large, framed photo, a young Arthur Lynn and Edward Sterling, standing proudly in front of their Sterling Lynn Technology sign. 30 years ago, Edward and I were like you and Chris. Arthur said, pouring me tea. Two bro kids. He was a business genius. I was the tech guy. A perfect match. What happened? The company got big. We went public. Edward changed, the old man said, his gaze distant. He started to believe capital was king, and technology was just a tool. We disagreed more and more, until he opened a drawer and took out a yellow contract. In 1998, while I was on a business trip, he secretly restructured the company and pushed me out. His excuse was that my technical roadmap was too aggressive. I looked at the unfair contract, a chill running down my spine. The reason Ava had given for rejecting my business plan was almost identical. So you're investing in me to get revenge? Arthur shook his head. At first, yes. When I saw how Sterling had rejected your plan, it was like seeing myself all over again. But later, I came to genuinely admire your talent and your backbone. Well, now Synergy is about to go bankrupt, and your investment with it. I don't care about the money, he waved his hand. The important thing is, do you want to keep fighting? Of course. You have grit, but no capital. You have tech, but no sales channels, Arthur said, cutting to the chase. I have a proposal. He opened a safe and took out a share certificate. This is the Sterling Enterprises stock I've been quietly acquiring over the years. It's 2%. With the shares held by a few old friends, it's enough to force a motion at the next board meeting. I stared at the document, stunned. You're going to? Not a hostile takeover, he smiled. A proposal for an equal partnership between Sterling and Synergy. Since Edward died, Sterling has been trying to pivot to digital, but they lack the core tech. And you? We have the tech, but no resources, I finished. But will Ava agree? The woman she is now. Perhaps, Arthur said meaningfully. That child was raised by her father to believe that control equals safety. But since the divorce and seeing your refusal to bend, he trailed off. She's changed a lot, especially in the last 2 months. How do you know all this? The old man smiled. I have my sources. The point is, if you're willing, I can arrange a formal business negotiation, not a handout, not an acquisition, but an equal, strategic partnership. I thought for a long time. The proposal was similar to what Ava had offered, but the context was entirely different. This wasn't a powerful CEO helping a struggling startup. It was a mutually beneficial business deal. I need to talk to my team. Of course, Arthur said, patting my shoulder. But you don't have much time. I returned to the office late at night. The team was still there. After hearing Arthur's proposal, a heated debate began. It lasted until dawn. In the end, we decided to accept. Not out of desperation, but based on a simple calculation. If Ava was truly willing to partner as equals, it was a win-win. If she tried to exert control, we could walk away. This time, the choice was mine. The air conditioning in the Sterling Enterprises boardroom was arctic. I loosened my tie and glanced at the empty chairs across from me. Ava and her team were 10 minutes late. Looks like the CEO isn't always on time, Chris whispered. Arthur Lynn, sitting beside me in a rare 3-piece suit, calmly sipped his tea. The door swung open. Ava strode in, followed by her team. She wore a charcoal gray suit, her hair perfect, her makeup a flawless mask. But as my eyes fell to her left hand, I froze. On her ring finger was a simple platinum band, the wedding ring I had bought her 3 years ago. The partnership, my apologies, everyone. A last-minute situation came up, she said, her voice steady, though she spoke faster than usual. Arthur put down his cup. Trouble at the board meeting? Ava's eyes flickered for a second. Uncle Arthur, your sources are as good as ever. She turned to me and gave a slight nod. Mr. Martinez, good to see you again. The formal greeting was like a knife to the gut. Months ago, she was begging me not to leave. Now she was Mr. Martinez. Ms. Sterling, I replied in kind. Once seated, Arthur got straight to business. I've called this meeting to formally propose a strategic partnership between Sterling Enterprises and Synergy AI. The details have been sent to you. I'm afraid that will have to wait. Ava's lawyer interrupted. Sterling is currently undergoing some internal restructuring. Arthur smiled. You mean the motion to remove Ava as CEO, initiated by Walter Davis? The room went silent. I looked at Ava and saw her fingers tighten on her folder, her knuckles turning white. Uncle, she said, her voice low, this is an internal Sterling matter. Not for long, Arthur said, producing a document. I hold 2%. Leo Martinez is about to acquire 3%, adding the shares from a few old friends. And that's enough to block Walter's motion. Leo Martinez? Ava looked at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. You're investing in Sterling Enterprises. I was just as shocked. Arthur had never mentioned this part of the plan. Not an investment, a stock swap, Arthur explained. Synergy AI will exchange a portion of its equity for a 3% stake in Sterling, and we form a strategic partnership. It's a win-win. Ava's lawyer immediately objected. That's highly irregular. Give me 10 minutes alone with Mr. Martinez. Ava cut him off. Her team reluctantly left, followed by Arthur and Chris. The silence in the massive conference room was deafening. You didn't know about this, did you? She asked, her voice softer now. No, I admitted. She gave a wry smile. He always was. Unpredictable. Who's Walter Davis? I asked. One of the original board members. One of my father's old guard, she said, rubbing her temples. He's always resisted my push for digitalization. Now he's using my 2-month leave of absence as an excuse to rally the conservatives. I watched her closely. She looked exhausted. So you need this deal, I realized. Not just for our technology, but for Arthur's votes. She didn't deny it. She just looked me in the eye. Will you help me? A month ago, she held all the power. Now, our roles were reversed. I should have felt a sense of victory, but looking at the faint dark circles under her eyes, I just felt calm. From a business perspective, it's a win-win, I said carefully. But I need to know one thing. Do you genuinely believe in Synergy's technology, or do you just want to save your job? She took a deep breath. Does it matter? Either way, our futures are tied. Yes, I said firmly. It matters to me. Both, she said after a moment. I need the shareholder support. But more importantly, she pulled up a report on her tablet. Synergy's algorithm is crushing Chainlink in the small business market. I've been trying to pivot Sterling for 3 years. This is the technology I've been missing. The report was brutally honest, even highlighting the flaws in her own company's product. This was a different Ava. You've changed, I said. Have I? She twisted the ring on her finger. Maybe I've just learned to admit when I'm wrong. The small gesture made my heart stumble. She had never worn that sheep ring in public before. You're still wearing it, I noted. She stopped fidgeting with it. Habit, she said quickly, changing the subject. What are your terms for the partnership? I laid them out. Synergy remains independent. We license our patents. We don't transfer them. Sterling opens its client network, but we control our product roadmap. I expected her to negotiate, but she just picked up a pen and started amending the document. I'll add this. Synergy's core team gets Sterling stock options. And this, all joint projects will be co-managed, with no single controlling party. She pushed the document toward me. Is that fair enough? I was stunned. Are you sure? You're giving up control. If a partnership is built on control, how is it different from an acquisition? She said softly. This time, I want to try being equal partners. Her words hit me hard. The old Ava equated control with safety. The new one was learning to let go. One more thing, I said. I want to know the full story between Arthur Lynn and your family. He didn't tell you. Only his side. She looked out the window. 30 years ago, my father and Uncle Arthur started a company. My father believed Uncle Arthur's tech roadmap was too aggressive and pushed him out. Uncle Arthur went to America, founded another company, sold it to IBM, and became incredibly wealthy. Our original company almost went bankrupt in the 2008 financial crisis. My father rebuilt it into what is now Sterling Enterprises. So Arthur is doing this for revenge? I used to think so, she said, but now I think he's trying to correct a historical mistake, to prove that the path you wanted to take was the right one all along. Did your father ever regret it? Her expression clouded over. Before he died, he told me his biggest mistake wasn't choosing a conservative path. It was disrespecting his best friend and partner. The door opened. It was Arthur. Have our two CEOs reached an agreement? Ava and I looked at each other and nodded. We agree to the stock swap and strategic partnership, I said. As do I, Ava added. The teams filed back in and began hammering out the details. No one objected. Arthur smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes softening. This is how it should be. If only your father had been this reasonable. Uncle, Ava interrupted gently. About the board vote. Don't worry, the old man winked. Walter Davis doesn't stand a chance. The boardroom battle that followed was brief and decisive. Walter Davis brought up the conflict of interest. You two were married. This is nothing but a scheme to sacrifice Sterling's interests for your personal relationship. I recommend we deformalize the company, remove you, and prevent this blatant transfer of company assets. Ava was furious, but before she could speak, Jenna, whom Arthur had insisted be present, let out a little oops. She had accidentally projected Walter Davis's secret emails with a foreign equity fund onto the main screen. The emails detailed a plan to break up and sell off Sterling's core assets. The room erupted. Even Walter's supporters stared at him in outrage. This is illegal. Walter sputtered. Your actions are far more illegal, Ava said, her CEO persona fully restored. If you continue to oppose this partnership, I have no problem turning these emails over to the authorities. The meeting ended at sunset. I was heading to the elevator when Ava caught up to me. Leo, a word. She led me to her penthouse office. She took a small box from her drawer and pushed it toward me. I wanted to return this. Inside was the men's wedding band, looking brand new. I picked it up. Our initials and wedding date were engraved on the inside. You can keep it, I said, putting it back in a box. It's real gold, after all. She smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Thank you. For today. For choosing partnership over revenge. If the roles were reversed, I'm not sure I could have done the same. The admission was more meaningful than any apology. It was just a business decision, I said, trying to sound casual. So, you said you were doing a lot of thinking these past 2 months. What did you figure out? She looked out at the city lights. That my father was wrong. About control equaling safety. About power equaling happiness. These last 2 months have been the most real I've felt in a decade. Real. The word was so strange coming from her, yet it fit perfectly. It's getting late, I said finally. I'll see you at the signing in 3 days. Leo, she called out as I reached the door. The ring. Are you sure you don't want it? I looked at the box, then at the matching ring still on her finger. A complex emotion swelled in my chest. You hold on to it for now, I said, until I figure some things out. Walking out of the Sterling Tower, my phone buzzed. It was Chris. So, you're really taking her stock. I looked up at the lights still on in the penthouse office. It's a sound business decision, I texted back. Cut the corporate crap. He replied instantly. What did you two really talk about? I thought about Ava saying she'd felt more real in the last 2 months than in the last decade. Maybe we had both grown. We just confirmed a few things, I replied. Talked about the details. Details, huh? Did you confirm any physical details? As revenge? Go to hell, Chris. Just asking. I want to hear all about these details. ####. A new beginning. The official signing ceremony was held in the grand ballroom of the Sterling Tower. I adjusted my tie in front of a mirrored wall. I was thinner than I had been 3 months ago, but my eyes were clearer. Nervous? Arthur Lynn appeared beside me, looking dapper in a wine-red tie. A little, I admitted. Remember, he said, patting my shoulder, this is a partnership of equals, not charity. He leaned in closer. Ava was up until 3 a.m. last night, personally removing the last few clauses that could have implied a controlling interest. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. That was very unlike the Ava I knew. The doors opened, and the Sterling team entered. Ava led the way in an ivory white suit, her only jewelry the familiar wedding band. Mr. Martinez, welcome, she said, extending a hand professionally. Ms. Sterling, I replied, taking it. Her grip was warm and firm. The signing was quick. Under a barrage of camera flashes, we exchanged pens and signed our names. As we shook hands for the press, she leaned in close. Tonight, 7 p.m., top floor conference room. Just the two of us. Noticing my hesitation, she added, it's about work. A sensitive matter that needs to be discussed in person. Her breath tickled my ear, carrying her familiar perfume. I gave a subtle nod. What were you two whispering about? Jenna asked, pouting. She wants to discuss a confidential business matter tonight, I explained. Just the two of you? No one else. She said it's a matter of corporate security, only for the company leaders. Bullshit. She's just thirsty, Jenna scoffed. Then again, she is a beautiful, powerful CEO and your ex-wife. If you can't control yourself, a little rekindling of the old flame wouldn't be the worst thing. Are you jealous? I asked, stepping closer and looking into her eyes. She blushed and took a step back. I'm just afraid you'll let your hormones affect your business judgment. She turned her head away. I put my hand on her waist and whispered in her ear, Don't worry, I'll be good. Across the room, Ava watched us with a complicated expression. The post-ceremony reception was a blur of interviews and congratulations. Mr. Martinez, a reporter asked, what does this partnership mean for Synergy AI? It means our technology will now serve a much broader market, I answered smoothly. Across the room, Ava was telling a different group of reporters that the partnership was a critical step in Sterling's digital transformation, praising Synergy's technological prowess. Later, Arthur pulled me aside. See that man in the gray suit? He gestured toward an older man, glowering at Ava. That's Walter Davis. He's backed by international capital. They want to break up Sterling and cash out. Edward's biggest fear before he died was that guy. So this crisis wasn't a coincidence. There are no coincidences in business, Arthur said. But now, we have the votes to stop him. Your 3% is crucial. After the reception, I returned to the Sterling Tower. The top-floor conference room was empty, save for 2 boxes of takeout and a bottle of red wine on the table. Sorry, took a call, Ava said, walking in. She had changed into a simple white blouse and a black pencil skirt, her hair let down. She looked more like the Ava I remembered. No problem, I said, gesturing to the food. I figured you hadn't eaten, she said, opening a container. It was my favorite Cantonese takeout. Hope you still like it. The small gesture warmed me. We ate in a comfortable silence. The first project for this partnership, she said, breaking the silence. I want you to be in charge. I thought it would be a joint team. It was supposed to be, she said, but Synergy needs a chance to prove itself. We have a difficult client in Cleveland who has refused every attempt at digitalization. If you can win them over. Why are you giving me this opportunity? I asked. She swirled the wine in her glass. Do you remember what I said when I rejected your business plan 3 years ago? That I lack market experience and my tech was too risky. Yes, she nodded. Now I want to see for myself if I was wrong or if you've grown. It was a classic Ava move, framing a concession as a challenge. But for some reason, I wasn't annoyed. Her eyes no longer held that look of control, but one of genuine curiosity. I accept, I said, raising my glass. On one condition, I have complete autonomy. Of course, she said, smiling as she clinked her glass against mine. It's your project. We talked for a while, the conversation flowing easily. She asked where I was living. Moved out of Chris's place last month. Got an apartment near the office. Living alone? Not with Jenna, she asked casually. For now, I said, turning the question back on her. What about you? Still in the penthouse? Yeah, she said, looking down at her glass. It's too big for one person. The loneliness in her voice was palpable. I changed the subject back to business. Uncle Arthur told me Walter Davis is backed by Blackstone, she said, her business acumen resurfacing. They want our logistics division. So you needed this partnership, I stated. At first, yes, she admitted. But now, I value the technology more. Leo, I owe you an apology. For what this time? For everything, she said, her fingers tracing the outline of her wedding ring. For the lies, the control, not believing in you. I looked at her, this woman who was no longer just the powerful CEO or the fake simple wife, but just a person admitting her faults. I accept your apology, I said softly. And I should apologize too. For what? For never really trying to understand you, I said. For 3 years, I only saw the person you showed me. I never thought about why. Her eyes glistened. Uncle Arthur told you about my father? Some of it. He raised me to be his successor, which also meant raising me to be a control freak, she said with a sad smile. In his world, emotions were a weakness. Trust was a liability. My mother died when I was young. No one ever taught me what a healthy love looks like. Her honesty was disarming. I realized that in our twisted marriage, we had both been victims. I of her deception, and she of her own fear. And now, I asked, are you learning? I'm starting to, she said. I've been reading a lot of books on psychology, even started seeing a therapist. It's funny, right? Ava Sterling needing therapy. It's not funny, I said sincerely. It's brave. She smiled. You know, during my 2-month leave, I secretly attended your product launch. What? When? Last month at the tech park. I wore a wig and glasses and sat in the back row, she said with a mischievous grin. You were brilliant. Better than any product director at Sterling. I remembered seeing a woman in glasses taking copious notes and assuming she was a competitor. That was you. Yes. I wanted to see the real you, she said, her voice dropping. Not as my husband or my rival. Just as Leo Martinez. My heart hammered in my chest. We held each other's gaze. Finally, she looked away. It's getting late. At the elevator, she asked, who are you taking to Cleveland? Chris and two of our lead engineers. Have you considered bringing an industry consultant? She asked nonchalantly. The client is very old school. I'm open to suggestions. I knew what was coming. I have someone in mind. The elevator arrived. She stepped in and turned to face me. I stared at her as the doors began to close. She quickly hit the open button. You don't want me to? You would go personally? I asked, a part of me still wondering if this was another play for control. Only as consultant. Not as the boss, she said, her eyes searching mine. Unless you'd rather I didn't. Okay, I interrupted. If you really want to come, welcome aboard. As the doors closed, I saw a genuine, unrestrained smile light up her face. Back in my apartment, my phone buzzed. Cleveland, here we come. Good night. I hesitated, then typed back. Good night, Ava. It wasn't an ending or a new beginning. It was something else entirely. A new possibility. Jenna's call came a few minutes later. Don't worry, I said with a smile. I kept my promise. No funny business. I hope you die of exhaustion from resisting her, Jenna grumbled. You're not allowed to see that which alone anymore. Okay, I promise, I laughed. Hashtag. Epilogue 2 years later, Synergy AI dominated the small and medium enterprise market and successfully went public. On the night of our IPO, I stood at the window of our new headquarters, watching the reporters below. The stock had closed 27% above our most optimistic projections. Jenna wrapped her arms around my waist from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. Chris wants to pull an all-nighter to celebrate, she said. The nameplate on her chest now read, Jenna Lee, So-Oh. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. Congratulations. I always knew you could do it. It was from Ava. I looked across the city to the Sterling Tower, its top floor still illuminated. 2 weeks later, she asked to meet at an old tea house. Leo, I'm tired, she said, sliding a folder across the table. It was a stock transfer agreement. If I were willing to hand Sterling over to you, would you? Her voice trailed off. You and Jenna. Ava, I said, using her name for the first time in what felt like forever. We went our separate ways. A tear rolled down her cheek. I'll wait for you to change your mind, she whispered, pushing the folder back toward me. No matter how long it takes. When I left, Jenna was waiting across the street, holding 2 bubble teas, mine with extra boba, just how I liked it. How did it go? She asked. I glanced back at the tea house. Ava was standing at the window, a silhouette against the setting sun. She raised a hand and gave a small wave. It wasn't a plea to stay. It was a farewell. It was fine, I said, taking Jenna's hand. Let's go get hot pot. My phone buzzed again. It was Chris, sending new office designs to the group chat. Jenna leaned in a look, her hair tickling my cheek. On a massive screen across the street, the evening news announced a new, expanded partnership between Sterling Enterprises and Synergy AI. The crosswalk light started flashing. I squeezed Jenna's hand, and we ran across the street, just as the timer hit 0. Behind us, the wind chimes of the tea house tinkled in the breeze, like the gentle blessing of a story that wasn't quite over.